Okay. Um, so the purpose of tonight's meeting is to essentially just follow up on the communication that we had last week on the incident that occurred Christmas Eve at the gas station at the corner of West 8th and Pedretti. The fire department and MSD, I think many of you were on the call last week. You're well aware of the situation that the fire department and MSD responded on that afternoon of Christmas Eve. And, really we've been working together on this situation since then. And so tonight is the second meeting that we are hosting with the West Price Hill Community Council, as well as the residents that make up the West Price Hill community. And I'm joined by some other agency partners here. Not all of them that were here last week are here this week, but I am joined again with District Chief Kenny Caldwell from the Cincinnati Cincinnati Fire Department, and then some others too. We got Antonio Young with the City Health Department, as well as Ann Gregg with the Ohio Department of Health. Then Ann is a toxicologist with in the health assessment section of environmental health at the Ohio Department of Health. Joined by Matt Mullen with the Office of Environmental Sustainability within the city. And then we've got Deb and Eric, who are helping out with some of the housekeeping issues and just keeping track of questions and whatnot. So Eric and Deb are monitoring the chat function. We're going to do this meeting just like we did last meeting with regards to raising your hand in the either in the reactions or in the participant area. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand. Otherwise, you can put a question in the chat, and we will go through those questions as they come up after I just kind of give an overview of maybe some things that have happened in the last week since we last spoke. And so everybody will be muted, but you will be unmuted when you raise your hand and when it's your chance to talk. And then also just please lower your hand after you are acknowledged on that. So again, I want to emphasize, I want to thank you all, first of all, for participating again and, just being interested and engaged and helping to, get the word out with regards to what the current status of things are. I also want to emphasize that MSD is really communicating the communication effort on this in terms of organizing the question and answer and coordinating with many of the different agencies that are involved in this. And again, primarily because of the fact that the source, the gas station originated on the gas station property, but it made its way into our sewer, which then also caused impacts by using our sewer, if you will, and for getting that material into the fumes, if you will, into people's homes. So that's really why we are really, somewhat front and center engaged on helping to make sure that this, gets addressed, gets corrected, and then, certainly we try to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I also want to emphasize that, we might not have all the answers right now. Only a week has passed since the first meeting, so we'll try to answer what we can, but it could take several weeks or months before everything gets addressed. Also, I want to just clarify that there's nobody here from Buster tonight. There's also no one here from Ohio EPA and no one here from ATC, and ATC is the contractor that's working for the gas station. So if you have questions there, we'll try to answer them. And if we can't, we will make sure that we get those passed on to those different entities so that we can, try to get those answers back to you. So just to recap from our meeting last week, we shared what happened and what was happening at the First Stop gas station. We heard, many of the concerns from residents about the vapors. We talked about some of the cleanup protocols, what MSD, what Cincinnati Fire, what Department of Health, what Ohio and Buster were doing to address this issue, and specifically at the corner of West 8th and Pedretti and the gas station there. So last week we shared what was determined to have caused the leak. Deb, were you just swatting a fly or are you trying to get my attention? Okay.
Just swatting a fly.
So last week we shared, and I'm going to try to remember. Okay, I'm going to try to share just the visuals that I had last week. Let's see, I share that. Okay. All right, so this is just a recap of what we shared last week in terms of what was determined to be the cause of the leak. When this is really based on the evaluations that were done by the gas station owner, even I think before ATC came on board, but it was determined through a tank tightness test and a test of the pipes that feed the gas dispenser from the tanks. It was determined that a leak was identified approximately in this general area from the pipe that fed the dispensers from the tank. And it was determined that they were going to install a recovery trench because their thinking was that the leak occurred here. And just to show a different view here. So the leak occurred at the product line, someplace on the product line that fed the dispensers. So the dispensers here, the underground storage tanks here, somewhere along here, they believe that the leak occurred. And what they thought happened was that the leak then kind of made its way down the trench line of the product line into the trench line of the sanitary sewer. And that's how it got into our sanitary sewer. And so what they were anticipating they were going to do was to, and again, this is just now a profile view. So you've got the trench of the product line is higher than the building lateral that then goes to feed the main sewer with the sewage from the inside the gas station. And it was thought that this product line broke, leaked in some way, and then that material flowed through the gravel of the trench of the building sewer and got into our sewer. They scheduled that work to begin on January 6th, and that was Tuesday. They were going to construct that on Tuesday, and then after it was constructed, they thought it would take about a day to construct. And then Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of last week, their plan was to then essentially connect up a vac truck to then extract the vapors from these wells. Well, when they got out there to do that, and they started digging here, the subsurface was not, as in good shape as they thought. And what happened was there was a lot of pea gravel that just started filling this in. So they actually had to stop and abandon this idea. They filled it up with some temporary fill, or not floatable fill. So it's a fill material that actually stabilizes it, because they were concerned with, there was a water line exposed there. It's a building water line. And they just did not want to really be into more repair than what they were originally trying to do. So they had to abandon that area. And so then what they came up with was a plan B, and that plan B was going to be implemented on Saturday. So Saturday the 9th. And so they began that on Saturday. They got the truck lined up again. So instead of having it right in the center there near where the gas island is, they moved it so it essentially was going to be closer to the apron of the driveway. And they thought that that would be better material. That's going to be closer to where the sewer comes, the building sewer comes into the main sewer. And they thought that would be good material. Well, so plan B started on Saturday, and they had their special truck there. And once the project began again on Saturday, they learned that that subsurface also is presented some different issues. What they uncovered was they found that there was another building foundation there. that they were not expecting, as well as the fact that the building sewer itself looked like it had been put together in many with, over time with different material. And that also that the building sewer was not actually in a gravel trench, but rather had more clay material behind it. And so again, they essentially had to abandon both Plan A as well as Plan B. And so now, after excavating in those two different areas, uncovering the fact that the sewer line, the building sewer line, is not actually in a trench like typically you would expect it to be. It's covered more with clay. That perhaps the material isn't necessarily just going from the where the leak occurred into the main sewer by the trench, but potentially it could be getting in through these other materials that the building sewer is made of. I guess it goes from pipe, maybe some clay, and some other material. So that creates maybe some bad joints where there's some leaky joints. And so that's really the as much information as we have in terms of that. And they're now in the process of trying to come up with their Plan C for how they're going to install this recovery trench. So now I think, so at this point in time, ATC is working on that Plan C. I think what they have suggested to us is that they are going to be doing it now potentially closer to the building as opposed to the, closer to the island or close to the road. They're actually going to move up here now, as well as potentially put one near where the leak is thought to have been started. And again, they do have better indication of that based on the testing that was done of the pipe, of where it was leaked. So they think they're going to probably do something here. But again, neither MSD nor Cincinnati Fire Department has anything from ACT or Buster definitively on that. And, that's information that we're really awaiting from them. Both the Cincinnati Fire Department and Matt Mullen from Office of Environmental Quality was out there for, if not both attempts, the second attempt. I know Matt was out there for the second attempt. So I'll just pause here and ask them to fill in any additional details on that if they'd like. So District Chief Caldwell, you want to add to that?
No, you explained it really well. And basically we were just on scene to make sure operations were running smoothly and if they needed our assistance with anything. So they didn't call on us, and really that's a subcontracted out piece to this whole part is them doing it. And we just want to make sure we're on scene to watch them do it. So that's kind of the part we played in all of it.
Thank you. Matt Mullen, would you like to add anything to that? Did I miss anything?
I think you covered it pretty well as far as the first and second attempt. It's just the first one that the hole was caving in too much. And then in the second one, we ran into a concrete building foundation and then an old basement floor, which made things tough. And like you said, the trench had some clay in it, and ATC did not want to compromise or risk jeopardizing the integrity of the sewer line. And so the decision was made to call it off and regroup and come up with another plan. Like you said, do some excavation closer to the fast stop building.
Yep.
We have a hand raised from Sean Newman.
Okay.
I'm sure Laura can attest to that. This has been a service station for well over 40 years with many iterations and many additions and subtractions. So I understand they're not going to find a lot of things under the concrete that have changed over the years. So it's going to be a little bit of a nightmare for ATC. They're going to dig, they're going to find something that's going to block them. And we're just going to have to keep going on.
Yep, I think that is absolutely correct. Because of the age of it and whatnot, it does present some challenges, but there are, certain obligations that they have to, go through. And that's just one of the challenges of this particular site. And to that point, actually, I'll bring up this. In MS, we have been also looking at, the records that we have at MSD. And we've identified that there actually used to be a building sewer. So this is our GIS information. This is the property that the gas station sits on. I guess maybe it kind of goes around there or whatnot. But the point I want to make here is that, so this is the gas station building. This is the island with the pumps. And currently this pink line is their sewer lateral. And that's the line, they've been focusing on. First, they were going to put the extraction well here and then draw vapors from, the pink dotted dash line. But what we've identified in the historic records is that there used to be a building lateral that fed this site down gradient of the monitoring well, of the gas station. And again, it goes all the way to the property line of the gas station. So we have passed this information on to ATC and Buster. We know that from our records that go back of our condition assessment. So MSD, we actually do assessments of the sewer. We get cameras and TV, equipment that is designed specifically to be able to go through sewers so that we know where do we have, even old pipes that are in good shape or, relatively new pipes that are in bad shape. And then we go out and, try to repair those and stuff like that. Well, we try to do that to our whole system. And I'll tell you right now, we only have been able to do that to half of our system, but we did that in 2011 on this particular line, this green line. And what we identified is that from that TV footage that we have, that in 2011, it appeared that there was actually groundwater coming in from a cap tap. And so from our opinion, this could be a potential source of how this material could be getting in as well. So we have passed on that information to ATC and Buster, and that again will be used by them in their various assessments to try to address this. We also did collect a sample of the wastewater on New Year's Day. We actually collected a sample down here, and that did actually show some VOCs in that wastewater. So that just makes us believe that, well, we know that it was getting in there, but now we also have water quality information that confirms that it was in there too. So again, we've passed that information on to Buster and ATC, and they will be using that in their investigations.
We also have a hand raised from Laura Hamilton.
Sure.
I just wanted to circle back. Sean mentioned that he thought I could attest that this may have been a gas station for 40 plus years. I'm only 49 years old. I didn't grow up in this community, but it's my understanding that there was like a sort of a house there that had some kind of a small pony keg, but I don't believe that there was gasoline on the property based on my understanding of history from those who did live here until the 1980s. And I don't know if you guys can address that question here or not.
Well, it was a Sahio gas station. As long as I can remember, I'm 55. As far back as I know, when I was 5 years old, it was a Sahio gas station. And we would pass it every weekend going to my grandma's house. So that's my recollection. Prior to that, I don't know.
Okay, well, I think that, someone like Sean, who has been there long, to be able to attest to that is good. We, and I don't know, Matt, if you, I know you have experience more than than many of us here with regards to just the tier 1 assessments in terms of how far back would they even go of looking at something like that. But they're really focused on the current state of the groundwater plume or whatnot, as in terms of whether it was this issue or something maybe that happened 30 years ago. I don't know that how that would get addressed. Matt, do you want to speak to that at all?
I would suspect that the current problem started Christmas Eve or immediate or in the week or so before that. If they've been selling gas there for the past 40 years, as we suspect. I think that just with everything, the problem with the tank gauging system and the brand name is Veeder Root, as we were talking about before the meeting, but the Veeder Root indicating that there was a problem. That this is not a long-term problem, but something. I think the Buster regulations have been in place, I think, since the mid 80s. So I think that would have captured, again, we don't know how long the station's been there. That's pretty easy to figure out. But Buster requires people to come into compliance and meet their regulations. You can't be grandfathered in because you're an old station. Your tanks and your distribution equipment have to meet current standards. And if not, you can't sell gas. So I think that the problem was a relatively recent one. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I guess my concern living here was the age of the equipment, and when that was mentioned, it caught me a little off guard. And whether that equipment may be aging out potentially soon, or has already, or is obsolete. Would we be able to get the answer to the question about that by the next Zoom?
I'm not sure if the records were, I don't know the records that were kept on when things were installed at the gas station. I do know that the equipment is tested periodically. Thinking back to our last meeting, I think something was mentioned about them passing a test in November at some point. And whether it's a tank tightness test or I'm not sure what the tests that they do to determine the equipment is tight and not leaking.
Maybe we could ask the fire department. I know we have two specialists that are under the program of Buster with District Chief Caldwell, and Al Hardin is on. And so the Cincinnati Fire Department does provide, some operating permits or conditions. And I don't know if Al or District Chief Caldwell can address anything as it relates to the equipment that they have on there for monitoring.
Yeah, I'll let Al take care of that part of it because he is certified under Buster. But just for the record, just from talking to Buster from the state, I believe those tanks were put in about 88, right around 88. And they do their inspections every 3 years is when they do their inspections. But as the technical piece of it, Specialist Hardin is a underground storage tank, has a certification in it. So he can speak more to the certification of that part.
Yes, sir, that is correct. Every 3 years, they go for their compliance testing through the state. And of course, those tanks were installed in 1988. In November of 1984 is when the Buster regulations started, as far as when they started keeping the records of tanks. My understanding is that station has been there much longer than that. As far as the equipment goes, as long as the equipment is passing the monthly 2.0 tests as far as leak detection, and it also has automatic tank gauging, as long as the equipment is passing those tests, then typically the the equipment is believed to be sound.
Thank
Okay,
you.
and Mr. Newman, you had a question too about the Veeder route. We might have some folks who can answer that or at least capture it really good, so we answer it for you.
Yeah, I was just asking what particular Veeder-Root model that was, because I have all the technical manuals on what Veeder-Root uses as a flow chart. If there's a leak detected, we look here, we look here, we look here.
Yep.
With BP gas, generally, the first thing that most technicians look at is the filters. They change the filters because there's so many additives in that particular brand of gas that they'll change the filters first. I'm thinking that going through the flow charts on most of the systems is that they didn't dispense the 5 gallons that Veeder-Root requires to test the system once they change something. So if they change a filter, they dispense 5 gallons. And if the error doesn't come back, then that quote unquote solves the problem. If the error comes back, then they start following the process. But the process is different for each particular model slightly. So, and I do have a couple questions on, is MSD and CFD going to be reimbursed for the costs that they're incurring monitoring and regulating this process? And also, I understand from, last week's meeting, we knew that the canisters were going to come back on Tuesday. Did they come back? What did they show?
Yep. Okay. And I can answer that. We're going to talk a little bit about that information, the air quality stuff in just a little bit. So you're actually now remind me, what was your first question again? Sorry, it's been a long day.
That's okay. First question was obviously the Veeder-Root information, if we can get
Right.
that. Second question was, is MSD and
Oh, yeah.
CFD going to be reimbursed for the time that taken for you guys to do what you need to do?
Yeah. So we will attempt to do that, just like, you guys have the information on the website that we set up in terms of how you can submit a claim of reimbursement. And MSD has talked with Fire about that, about, us potentially doing something like that as well. So we will be considering our, an accounting of our time and effort as well of dealing with all this too. Yep. And so with that, then I just want to recap, we talked about this last week with regards to, how to stop, clean, and remediate. So right now, because these 2 Plan A and Plan B attempts did not construct the vapor extraction system as they were planning, that was going to be the immediate corrective action that they were going to do. They were going to extract those vapors, and this time last week we thought that that would be done by now. It's not. So we're still in that immediate corrective action phase, and so the clock started ticking on the day, I believe on Christmas Eve, for them to complete a immediate corrective action report that they need to submit that says everything they did. And so they're still in the process of doing that immediate corrective action. And then next phase will be the longer term Tier 1 investigation report, which ATC said that, they already have started that as well. That's due in 90 days. So the other thing I just want to just give you an update on too. So they've been, ATC has been monitoring, and the fire department has been there quite a bit. Again, the fire department's doing a great job of being on site and really helping eyes and ears out there. The fire department's also kind of taken over some of the sampling of the manholes. Ohio EPA was doing that up until Friday. And so since Ohio EPA, they were here because of the emergency action. So we've been doing this now. It's, it's still getting resolved, but they felt like they could, sort of retreat and go back and do what they need to do on other efforts and whatnot, and felt comfortable that, that we really had a better handle on this now, and the fire department has taken on the sampling of the manholes, and then also the monitoring of the monitoring well. So ATC did have HEPACO out there today, and they pulled off about 1,600 gallons, maybe 1,500 gallons, actually, I guess, of material. They have no quantification of, how much gasoline are they estimating in that. But this has now been 4 times that the monitoring well has been pumped out, and then that material is being hauled off-site up to Middletown is where it's getting treated. So with that now, I guess what I want to do is maybe just ask District Chief Caldwell if you want to recap any of like what you guys have been doing, what your focus and right now, and then we'll get into the Department of Health and let Ann Gregg kind of give an overview of the evaluation of the data that she's been looking at from the health side of things. So District Chief Caldwell, is there anything you want to just summarize?
Sure. You kind of touched on a few of the things we are doing and will continue to do since the first day, is to continue monitoring the homes. We want to make sure all the citizens remain safe. So this is the best way we can do it, is to get into the homes and to use our meter and to get readings. So that way, if it's a spike or if something comes up, in particularly the very first few days was very imperative for us to get in. Now we've since seen a lot of the numbers and results go down to a very, very safe level. But we want to continue to monitor that. I know a few in the community may be tired of seeing our faces, but we're going to continue to remain on scene and available if they need us, to get readings in their homes. So that's our primary role, is to continue to maintain the community being safe from any of the vapors, just in case something else happens at the gas station while they're working. We remain on scene. We have our meters with us. We can go to anyone's home that requests it. Just use the MSD line that they've set up for a request. They'll make sure they get that to the fire department, because a lot of times we're out of our office on scene doing things, but they can maintain that and get that to us immediately. And they've done a great job of letting us know who needs to have readings and meter readings done in their home. So we'll continue to do that until we feel it deemed that we don't need to do it anymore. But right now we're still in the phase of making sure the community stays safe in their homes with that. And businesses as well. We're making our rounds to businesses to make sure the businesses are safe as well. And now we're also doing the manholes to make sure that those readings remain low as well. So other than that, we're going to remain on scene with our one of our tank guys, our underground storage tank guys remains on scene almost every time someone's on scene between ATC or a Buster representative. We want to make sure we're on site as well. We want to make sure we keep in contact with anyone who's doing work, so that we know what's going on and we can report back. So we've been doing a good job at tracking them down, figuring out their schedule, and making sure our schedule matches their schedule, so we can report back and see what they're doing on site, and to keep this thing moving till we get remediation.
Yep, thank you for you and your guys' help on that. And they did go out over the weekend, again, with the activity that ATC was implementing over the weekend. We did see somewhat of an increase in the vapors of that first manhole that's on the corner of West 8th and Pedretti over the weekend. But the thinking from ATC as well as others who have more experience in remediation like this, the type of equipment that they're using is really pushing kind of like knives down into the subsurface and blowing air into that, and that's kind of creating some movement of these vapors. So we did see a somewhat of an increase of the vapor just in that first manhole. And again, that's why I just really appreciate the fire department adding that to their list of things that they do and are doing on a daily basis, because it really does help us, kind of stay on top of, how the trends are heading in this regard. And So it was expected that we would see a bit of a bump there, and but we need them to, come up with their plan that they're going to be able to execute.
Mary Lynn, we have a hand raised from Sean, and we also had one go up from Denise Treehouse as well.
Okay. Sean?
Oh, I'm just wondering, there seems to be questions that are directed at Buster and EPA. Can we make sure that they're at these meetings so that they can directly answer questions?
Yeah, we did extend the invitation to them, and they, we could do our best to try to get them here. And what is the question on?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we can get them here so that they can answer the questions, and it's not a third party answer to questions that are being asked that we have to say, we'll get back with you. I think the point of these meetings is to inform the neighborhood. They are part of the process, and I want to make sure that they're here to answer questions. And I understand that everybody's busy, but I think this is important for the neighborhood. And if I need to extend a hand as with the community council, we can do that.
Sure.
Right.
Okay, and we had another hand from the Dree houses.
This is Don Treehouse. I guess I'm understanding or listening here that this is a much more unstable site than you originally thought from what you're digging through, and that the tanks from '88 obviously are 33 years old, I guess, and that everything about this seems dated, to say the least. So what kind of guarantee do we have as neighbors, knowing that the sewer line literally runs through the property and the sewer line's very old, that this isn't going to happen again? I mean, this all of a sudden I'm seeing a lot of questions pop up here, and I really wonder how safe, or what's the chance of this happening again?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and one that we're really concerned about as well. And why we are working in partnership with the different agencies and you all too, because this was very alarming to us in terms of what happened. And this isn't the only gas station either. I mean, we all rely on gas stations, and many of them are old, and something that I've been talking with both the fire department and the city manager's office is, what do we all need to do kind of differently as agencies that are, kind of third party to this, to Sean's point. How could we potentially either get information firsthand from, some of the busters, work that they're doing of the different stations that are out there, and and make sure that this doesn't happen again in someplace else. The fact is we have this one happening now though. And again, I'll just emphasize that I know that, we're working very closely with the fire department as well as the city manager's office and the solicitor's office to make sure that, things are being done in a way that this is not just going to be able to, back to normal anytime soon.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. I think what I'd like to do now is maybe go to Ann Gregg now. Ann is a toxicologist with the Ohio Department of Health, and Ann has had the opportunity to kind of pull together many of the different air quality sampling that's been done either by the health department, by the fire department or US EPA, and from many of the different residents that wanted people to come into their homes to gather data. And so, Ann, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of give everybody an update on what the Department of Health is seeing and looking at all this data from a bigger picture, as well as whatever you can share. in terms of information or resources.
Sure. Thanks, Mary Lynn, and thank you for the fire department. I think the data that you guys have been collecting and all of this follow-up has really been what shows the trends, right? And I'm sure, I'm actually hoping, maybe this is an assumption, but from Christmas Eve and Christmas Day to today, I'm hoping that your homes are definitely much more comfortable for you and that you're not smelling anything. But if you are, be sure to contact your health department. Be sure to maybe you can reach out to me. It's really important that if there are any complaints, if you're having issues, let us know. And the fire department can come out and take those readings. These are headaches, nausea, fatigue. A lot of these things are, come from other reasons as well, obviously, but knowing that there is this exposure, it's definitely worth taking a look at, and it's definitely worth taking a note and passing that information along if you feel comfortable with that. If you don't, definitely seek out your medical help with your doctor, just to kind of make sure, depending on whatever sensitivities you may have. As of now, we haven't had any, as a group, any complaints since over a week ago, as far as I know, and maybe someone else on the team can specifically say that for sure, but I have not heard of any other complaints recently, which I think is a very good thing. Especially with the numbers that I was seeing from December 28th, 29th, and 30th. Those numbers were much higher, even in the living spaces on the first floor, away from the basements and things like that were much higher. So I've consolidated all the data that are the total VOC measurements when they came into your homes. And of the 20 to 30 homes and businesses, I asked the fire department to kind of do another round this weekend after I pulled all the data together, and asked them to go back just to kind of circle back and make sure that the homes that were declining have actually gotten to the level that we would like to see with your indoor air. And so in that circulation this weekend, there's really only 2 or 3 homes that are kind of on that borderline where we'd really like to get some more data just to kind of make sure that everyone's okay with those homes. They're definitely not in the levels where we used to see them, but they're not as low as we'd like to see. So if the fire department's coming around and you feel comfortable with it, especially during COVID or whatever, but it really would be helpful for us to kind of round out the data set and make sure that everyone who has complained and asked for this kind of monitoring to get all the way down to 0, so that we know and that they know and everybody can feel comfortable in that scenario. Of course, there's also that bit that there's been a lot of things going on the site this week, and it's going to continue. And so it's very important that you're vigilant and kind of making sure that, as this work gets done underground with the sewers and this and that, you're kind of keeping an eye out that, hey, this smell or that smell is coming back. It's certainly possible, and it's certainly important to get the fire department back in to kind of check those levels.
We have another hand raised, by the way.
Okay. And I want just Ann to also talk about the canisters that were collected at about 3 different properties on how we're going to get that information disseminated. There's some restrictions on it, so I just want to ask you to specifically address that, Ann, please.
Absolutely. So the canisters were done by the US EPA, and that's obviously the federal level, and we have a non-disclosure agreement as a state agency, and so does Ohio EPA, to keep a lot of that information private for people, understandably, right? So I will be writing letters to the people who had canisters in their homes and disclosing all of that data. Overall, I would say that those data were very good. They were collected on the 29th and 30th of December. So that is just a snapshot of a 24-hour period, 2 weeks ago. So I'd like to just kind of keep that in mind, that even though things were much higher, these data, there was only 2 specific kind of hits that that were above a screening level that we would like to see, but it was not alarming. And since the fire department has gone out to many of these homes since then, in these particular homes, there have been lower VOC levels and levels that we feel comfortable with at this point. So those were from, January 4th or 5th, and then of course this past weekend. So depending on when they actually got into those particular homes. So we feel very confident that those particular homes are fairly safe. Is there a hand?
Yeah. We have two hands up currently. One from Lindsay Loda and Laura Hamilton.
Okay, Lance Loda.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So from what I heard at the last meeting and this meeting, I realize it's probably too soon for a formal after action review, but it does sound like the work that's being done now and that has been done since, I guess, the 29th or so has been appropriate, has been effective. But what I'm really concerned about, what I'm really disappointed about, is it sounds like nothing substantive was done until the 28th or 29th. And that's unacceptable. That's way too long. I don't know why something significant wasn't done on the 24th or the 25th. I realize that it was Christmas, but we could have lost a home or a number of homes during that period of time. There could have been an explosion. Thank God it didn't happen. But it seems like a phone call's made, a number of people have fumes in their basement. Something should have been done. There should have been a team out there on the 24th pumping those tanks, figuring out where the leak was, and taking some type of effective steps to resolve the problem.
Mary Lynn, you're muted.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. I totally understand, where you're coming from there. And I was just looking for, there's a lot of different activities that were happening. I know that, the fire department was out there on the 24th, MSD was out there on the 24th, MSD was out there again on the 25th, doing investigations. I think the fire department was as well. And as it was, going on, I mean, we were very concerned in trying to identify where was this coming from. It was not, it did present some challenges, and it presented in a way that was, also, some people, I think, even on one of the news reports were talking, it didn't smell like gas, it smelled like something else, so tracking something like that, is sometimes an art and a science. I can't say that everything was perfect, but I can say that, the folks and the agencies that were responding and are responding are doing so, for your protection and benefit. And thank God nothing bad did happen. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I spent most of my days, from the day after Christmas through New Year's, and several days after New Year's, just dealing with this issue, and bringing folks together from different agencies every single day, trying to bring more resources here. So, I'm thankful that, something terrible didn't happen, although I think something terrible did happen, and we have to, it's not over yet. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And I think that, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than, we're here to try to get to the end of this, and also, improve upon this moving forward for the next time. And hopefully there isn't a next time, but we always have to, I mean, the fire department certainly always has to deal with the next time because there's always something else that's that we're waiting to deal with and respond to quickly.
I can help you out, Mary Lynn, a little bit on this as
Thank
well.
you.
Because we deal with a lot of these type of emergencies, and they're all different. Every emergency is different, and this is a very unique emergency that we speak of here. We don't see this a lot. This is something different, even for the fire department, and we see a lot of different types of emergencies, but this is different. Initially, it came in as people smelling things in the area. So when you have multiple streets and multiple people calling in and smelling different things, that happens a lot where there's a smell in a neighborhood. So we get that a lot, and we'll go around and check the neighborhoods. And we thought a lot of times it comes from the sewer because the sewer is connected to a lot of the neighborhoods. So we began that very first day flushing the sewer system. We did. So we did the actions that was normal for a smell in a neighborhood. And that proceeded to go on for a couple of days until we really were able to pinpoint and zone in on the gas station and realize the problem was not in the sewer system, but yes, it was, but there was a bigger problem than just the sewers putting out a smell or gas. We have something different, and that's a little more major than that. And we were able to attack it from that thing. And so we were doing things every day and coming out. We were checking people's homes with our meters very first day. So we were doing what we thought was basic fumes, and some of them even said they were getting in their homes. So we would go and check their homes with meters, but getting no readings initially until another couple of days later, and then the readings started to come in from their homes, and then we really had to trigger down and figure out it's not just a smell in a sewer, but we have a different type of problem here. So there were things going on, and we did it based upon protocol initially. But when it was underground, we couldn't see it. So we really had to trigger and hone in on the gas station. So it took maybe a little more time for us to focus in on that particular problem, because that's something we do not see every day. We don't even see it every decade.
So, I know there's some question about, when we really started. We did uncover, or we did have cold weather on Christmas Day. So we did flush the sewer on the day before Christmas. I think on Christmas Eve, we had a crew out there that did do some flushing of the sewers. And then on Christmas Day, we had an investigator, and we have investigators that are specifically focused on looking for industrial sources. And we, because we have a pretreatment program, it's called, for different types of industrial or commercial waste that discharges to the Metropolitan Sewer District. They have certain requirements that they have to have pretreatment, or, we sometimes have like illegal dumping or different spills. So those folks do a lot of those investigations. So we did have folks out there doing investigations, but on Christmas Day, because the temperatures were so low, that was a risk of a water main break. Typically, our standard procedure is that if temperatures are approaching freezing, we don't flush, or we don't let hydrants flow because of the risk of a water main break. And Waterworks just really doesn't want us to do that. So it was scheduled for our flushing to come back out the next day on Saturday at 1 o'clock, which is what essentially started again. Once we got into this and saw that the source was identified on that Saturday, even though temperatures were dropping, we consulted with the fire department and with the city manager's office and with Waterworks, and we all agreed, let's just keep it flowing. And just because it's, better to keep more water flushing through the sewer based on the situation that was occurring with regards to the gas station, and not knowing how much, were they leaking or whatever. So, and we continue to flush it just really, for an abundance of caution, to keep the flow fresh and flowing until they actually complete this extraction of the vapor that they plan to do as part of the immediate corrective action.
But also to piggyback off of that, we we heard you, and we will be doing it as a fire department, our own after action report, because we do that internally on any incident like this, and any major incident, because there's always something to learn. There's always a way we can get better, and we're going to try to get better no matter what we're doing with this, and figure out a way we can with this type of incident, figure out how we can get to it a little faster and a little quicker.
Chief, will that be shared with the community?
Typically we don't. We just share it amongst ourselves, and that's just kind of an internal document to help us get better. We can also put something together to share with the community if that's what you guys want over at the West Price Hill. I'm sure we wouldn't have a problem with sharing any of that with you guys.
Yeah, and I'll add to that as well. We've talked with, there's just like it's called the Office of Performance and Data Analytics, and it's an office in the city of Cincinnati that, is trying to, identify performance improvement or continuous improvement opportunities. And we've talked about maybe bringing in different agencies associated with this kind of event of how can we improve things from a standpoint of, getting information from Buster, for example, if they're following up on some kind of activity that the city has no knowledge of, but it would be good for us to know that kind of information.
Yeah, I would like to get all parties involved in the follow-up that we give to the community. That way we can all have input of what we did, because there was so much overlap in this that we really need to discuss who was handling and doing what at what time. And we have a timeline in the very beginning that we've created, but to kind of go over that entire timeline and what things happen, so we can see if we can maybe expedite things, who to call, emergency numbers. We kind of have a list of things we're trying to put together to see if what we can do next time. Hopefully there's never a next time, but we want to always be at the ready next time if it does happen, and be better prepared.
I see that there's a question about from Renee about noticing that some people in charge on Tuesday were from USCPA from the Superfund division. Can someone speak to the Superfund and if they are responsible for cleaning up the contaminated land? So I can address that. So USCPA was here. They got there on Tuesday, the 29th, and they were brought here by Ohio EPA. So Ohio EPA felt like they actually don't have jurisdiction over indoor air quality, and they were really concerned that the levels that were being recorded by the fire department, that was certainly a concern. And while the health department, the Cincinnati Health Department was engaged in this effort, the US EPA has broader jurisdiction over indoor air quality. And so Ohio EPA was able to reach into US EPA and bring some resources down from Cleveland. Drew Cocker, his name was, from Cleveland, from a community response and the SMART team, which is the Superfund START team that actually starts to do some of these initial activities should it become a Superfund issue. They brought a team from Chicago that actually did a lot of the indoor air sampling that many of you might have interacted with, and then they stayed here probably, I think, until New Year's Eve. They left on New Year's Eve, again because the levels were dropping in many of the homes, and at that time they felt like the area or the issue had been identified. Another reason why they were brought here too was from MSD's perspective, we could not get into our sewer to investigate where might this be coming from, because it represented a risk to our employees, as well as the equipment that we have is not intrinsically safe. So we could put cameras and stuff into the sewers, but if a lot of those cameras or those cleaners that we have are creating a spark as it's winding through the sewers and assessing it and whatnot, it was a risk. So we couldn't actually get it in there. So we actually wanted help from US EPA to help vent the sewers and help us get in there to assess. And then as US EPA was doing a lot of their indoor assessments by going door to door, MSD actually installed vented manhole lids to see how that would actually work in the early stages of this. I think on the 30th, actually, we installed those again at the sort of the brainstorming suggestions that we kind of batted around. And then it appeared that that was actually helping significantly in terms of the venting of the sewers just by putting those manhole lids there, but with grates. But yeah, so US EPA was engaged, but because again, they were seeing some favorable responses in terms of the air quality improving. And then the Department of Health got more engaged with regards to reviewing the data and, you know, kind of leaning on some of the guidance that they had, that US EPA retreated back to their locations. And so now this clearly falls within the buster requirements and the buster responsibilities that both Ohio EPA and US EPA both retreated, and you know, kind of the ball now goes directly on the lap of Buster for them to oversee and enforce their regulations to see that the site gets cleaned up to Ohio EPA standards.
Mary Lynn, we have a couple hands raised currently. Lanzalota, his hand is still raised. I wasn't sure if you were finished with your comments.
Oh, I'm sorry, I am.
Okay. Next, we have Laura Hamilton, and then Don Driehaus also put his hand up again.
Hi, I had a question for Ann Gregg and also one for Mary Lynn Lador, but Mr. Lanzalotta's question did make me feel a need to, I guess, sort of make a statement. It's probably more of a statement than a question, and I just want to get this in the record, and I want to make it clear. I am grateful, truly grateful, as I know every resident in this area is, for everything that all the agencies on this call have done for us and continue to do. So I don't want to sound like I'm poking anyone in the eye here, but I do just want to get in the record that there are at least 4 runs, and I can say the addresses on here, but since this is going to go online, I won't unless someone asks me to. There are 4 runs, 3 on West 8th Street and 1 on Carnation on Christmas Eve that were labeled as the odor of gasoline. I smelled this odor by opening someone's back door. It smelled like gasoline. That was one of the residents that called it in as such. That resident even called it into the gas station when they couldn't get any help through fire on Christmas Eve. My personal communication with the chief executive of the city, John Cranley, also made it clear that we knew and felt it was gasoline coming from the gas station at 4501 West 8th and leaking into the city sewer. And why we felt that, because there are a number of other cities where this very thing has happened in the recent past here in America. 2 of which I've named to some of the people here before: Lafayette, Louisiana, and a condo complex called Willowbrook in Illinois, just outside of Chicago last year. So I do want to push back a little on that narrative. I do hope that there will be some kind of review, and that the West Price Hill Community Council and one or a few of the affected residents, not me, but someone who had this in their house, can be involved in that review. I think that's going to be important, so that maybe there can be a little bit better protocol next time. And especially, and again, I don't want to poke anyone in the eye. I hope that in the future, the decision will be to choose the potential to break a water main over the potential for an explosion, because I find that just a little bit troubling. Every time I hear that, it makes me cringe, knowing what could have happened here. If anyone wants to respond to that, interrupt me. If not, I'm going to move on to my question.
I just want to say I do appreciate everything that you guys have done. I think that because you guys have been vocal and you all noticed it, and I don't think we need to go on about that, but I think you guys also deserve some credit with regards to making sure that this is addressed, because this is a very unique situation. But to your point, I hear you. I understand what you're saying.
Thank you. I had a question for you. So since you're here, still on the screen, if I could, you mentioned earlier that 1,600 gallons of material were pumped out, and it's sort of a two-part question. One, is that material that you mentioned, use the term material, and I'd like more specifically to know, is that material liquid or mostly liquid, and where was it pumped out from? The tanks are empty. The monitoring well, I think, is empty. And I would like to ask where that was pumped out from and what it was. You're on mute. I'm not hearing anything.
Sorry, I had to find, I switched to share my screen and then that got rid of how I could unmute myself. Okay. So yes, I mentioned material was pumped off, and that material is coming from the observation well. So right here, and it is it's liquid material. So that if this cover is lifted, then essentially this is like an 8-inch diameter well, and every day the depth of that is checked, and essentially there's a trigger point of 1 foot, and that gives us an additional 1 foot of buffer. And that was again what they were thinking. Once this is at 2 feet, then it could potentially start draining back through the building trench. So ATC kind of identified, and when we kind of came up with this 1 foot trigger, so that when this well is showing that it's got 1 foot of material, then that's got to be the time that they just get somebody in to pump this out. And so they pumped off about between 1,500 and 1,600 gallons of liquid. And so generally that's groundwater, but it could have some material in it. So it could have some product in it. So I don't want to say it's just water, because it could be more contaminated water, but it's not all gasoline either. So it's a liquid material, and it's essentially the groundwater on site that also has had, this leak occur around it. So it could include some product petroleum.
So last week you were able to give us similar numbers about what came from the monitoring well, and you were able to tell us what portion of it was gasoline and whether it had a sheen. Is that analysis still being done? I don't think there's been any rain. That seems like a lot of liquid. And so I'm curious as to whether this is also being analyzed, why we don't have that information this time, and does it have a sheen, if you know?
Yeah. And I can't answer that entirely. And I'm going to ask Matt Mullen maybe to speak to that, because it most likely did have some product, some petroleum. But the estimating of how much actual petroleum in there is not very well defined. I did share last week that the estimate that we have been provided by the folks who are coming out to service that well. They've estimated on the first day that about 100 gallons of material of petroleum was in that first pump. The second time it was about 1 gallon of petroleum, and then the third time it was about 2 gallons. So we estimated, they shared with us, it was about 103 gallons of material being petroleum. But then in addition to just that petroleum, then there was about 3,000 gallons of water, some of which might have some contamination in it. So I didn't share like the update of what that is. We just so Matt, I don't know if you can explain a little bit better than I can in terms of the estimate of product and versus groundwater.
Yeah. Yesterday there was about 1/3 of a foot or 4 inches of gasoline floating on top of the groundwater. That's been pretty steady since the 6th. Now the water level comes up, but the product layer doesn't change. So that just means the groundwater's entering the tank pit. And that was all pumped out this morning. So yeah, there is a floating layer. It's what we call free product. And
And
it's hard to quantify the amount of gasoline that was pumped out from the tank pit, just because there's the tanks are surrounded by gravel. The gravel has little air pockets in between them, voids that the water fills. So and as it's pumped out, you know, the gasoline tends to cling to the pieces of gravel. So, you know,
and what they try to do too, from I think what Dan had shared with us last week, was that when they have HEPACO's the company that he's contracted to pump that well out. They try to do it over a 4-hour period, so they're doing it very slow, so that they're not just drawing a whole bunch of groundwater and then that petroleum product is getting lost in that gravel layer. So they're trying to do it very slow, so they keep as much of the or they capture as much of the petroleum as is floating for whatever area they're able to draw that water from.
I'm still confused. If it was able to be estimated last time, I don't understand why there's no estimate that this time, I guess is what I'm asking. Maybe I'm not asking that right. And also 4 inches over what area is Matt talking about? Is that a definable area? Is it a circumference of a pipe or a tank?
The product is measured in the well. The well's an 8-inch diameter. And then the tank pit itself, now if Mary Lynn, you can pull up the picture of the aerial view of the gas station. But the tank pit has 2 tanks in it. Over by, yeah, where it says tank pit observation well, you can kind of see the breaks in the concrete.
Like this here?
There's some fill ports that are white. Yeah. And so that's the area. Yeah. That's it. That rectangle right there that Maryland's kind of drawing her cursor over.
You got these white caps are caps to the 3 tanks, correct?
Yeah, those are fill ports where they're filled. And so that whole area is filled with both the tanks and the gravel that surrounds the tanks. And so the observation well is kind of sunk into the bottom of that pit. And it's hard for me to say, you know, what you'd have to calculate the void space between the pieces of gravel to figure out how much liquid that whole tank pit can hold. So,
And I think that will, with regards to the immediate corrective action report, I would think that ATC will try to estimate that. They weren't engaged in the first extraction of the well. They came on the scene, I think, for either the second or the third. So in retrospect, Dan is saying, well, he thinks that actually more than just 100 gallons was extracted from the first pull. And it is an estimate, and but I'm certainly curious as well, and we will try to get an answer on that. But I think that and we already asked that question, and he just wasn't able to provide that right away.
Okay, and I don't mean to go on. May I ask Ann Gregg a question as well, right quick?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, for Ann Gregg, my question was, she mentioned that she can't disclose addresses, which I absolutely understand, but she also mentioned that there were 2 or 3 homes that still had levels that were higher than we'd like them to be. And I wonder if she could give us some idea if those homes are directly adjacent to the gas station or further out, or if she could say the streets without disclosing locations. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Laura. I really love that you're you're really into all the details and getting all of this pulled together. And I'm sure that you're a wonderful communicator to a lot of your neighbors, and a great connection here with this process. So the homes are actually all different. Different distances from the home, from the actual site. So I've asked the fire department to kind of look around while they're in the basement to see what other options could be giving off VOCs, and maybe enhancing that reading from just the ambient environment, and that's not necessarily related to the sewer gas. Again, these levels are not that high. If we're looking for a safe level of 0.1 ppm, parts per million, these are only maybe 3 or 4 times higher than that. It's not in the the 70 parts per million range, or very high where they were around Christmas time. So it's really just a matter of being comfortable that they've gotten down low enough. And if they aren't getting low enough, then there must be an influence with the work being done, or maybe there's some other contaminant in their home that, with cleaning supplies or with building supplies or things like that, that could be contributing to that level. It's hard to say.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, are there other questions?
We saw the hand raised from Don Treehouse.
Okay. Go ahead, Don.
Yes, I kind of want to go back to your statement. You mentioned there are many other gas stations. Within this radius, there's 3 gas stations within a mile's radius of this current location. And after everything you're saying here, and I'm going to go back to the original points, we have an unstable site, we have obsolete tanks, we have a questionable operator. There's a big question of human error here with reading these gauges way prior to this event. And my question, I guess, is more to the fire department. Why would you even reopen these pumps if it's not necessary in the community? There's plenty of gas stations within the distance of this gas station. And you're just telling me now that there's still some risk, of nearby houses over 2 weeks later. I'm kind of questioning why we would reopen these tanks at all.
Well, that's a very good question, and that's a question we are asking ourselves, and that's the reason we revoked the permit initially, because of all of what you just said. So we will reevaluate once they remedy the things that they need to remedy, and decide if that's what we want to do as a fire department. We have not made any decisions on that yet at all. Mm-hmm. So we will reevaluate, get with our specialists, get with our tanks, get with our fire chief, and we'll make that decision mutually with everything that's going on, and come to some sort of conclusion of what we need to do to protect the community.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. So it's about 8:20 right now, and if there's no more questions, I do want to, I know that the community council has a meeting tomorrow night, and you were going to try to, we wanted to have this so you had some information to pass along to folks. Certainly try to drive them to the website that we have so that they can know what the updated information is. If they have claims that they want to make, they've got that information. I also wanted to, we do have this scheduled for right now. It's every week. However, next week on Monday is a holiday. And but I also wanted to, not necessarily say we're going to cancel for next week, but I did want to propose that we would resume a follow-up meeting on the 25th. The activities will continue to be performed, and we will, I think all of us, the agencies who are on here now will continue to work together and monitor things. And we can also update the website if there is any additional information. I just noticed Sean has a bird on his shoulder. Kind of nice.
He was being cantankerous and loud, so I had to put him on my shoulder to shut him up.
Okay. But I did want to mention that I would propose that we would have a follow-up on the 25th, but I wanted to get your all's input on that as well.
I know, I'm okay with the 25th.
Okay.
We have another hand raised from Laura Hamilton.
Okay. Laura? You're muted, Laura. Laura, do you still have a question? You're muted, Laura.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
I lost track on my screen. I apologize. I'm on a phone. My question was, well, it wasn't a question. I wanted to say that I thought the 25th might seem a little long in the tooth. That's a little ways out from where we are now, 2 weeks. And it sounds to me like potentially decisions could be made before that time elapses. And I have, I guess, concerns about that. Although I understand this Monday's a holiday, 2 weeks just seems like a long time. And it sounds like they could decide to button it all up and be finished and we won't hear anything more. Could that happen?
Well, I can't predict the future, but I understand where you're coming from. And I mean, I think what we could do perhaps is maybe, you know, Monday we could maybe set it up for midweek next week or something like that.
I think that would be nice if you guys are able to do it, assuming I'm not the only one who feels that way. I don't want to commandeer anything.
Mary Lynn, we could also send out an email update.
Yeah, and if there is any movement on that, but I'm fine either way, doing it either probably Tuesday. And I see in the chat we're hearing some agreement with Laura. So if you want, I'm totally fine. You know, having an update on probably the Tuesday or the Wednesday actually would work too for me. Again, I'm just kind of thinking for my own self, but certainly other people chime in too. It could be just maybe a brief meeting if, you know, there really is no movement as it relates to this session opening, but just kind of reporting out what they're doing. I mean, like I said, I can't predict the future, but I know that we are all working together. It's being monitored very closely by the city manager's office, as well as the solicitor's office and fire and MSD and health and everything. So we can send out another time next week and have an update.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yep.
Another hand up from Sean Newman.
Well, I was going to say, if there's any change, you could probably email us and we can get that out to our email list for the community council. If there's any updates or anything, if for whatever reason we can't have a Zoom call next week, we can get that out to the members. You know, so if there's any update from ATC, from Buster or anything else, we can try to get that out as quickly as possible.
Okay. All right. Well, we will absolutely keep you engaged if, you know, if there is just an update as opposed to something that's, you know, drastically going to change. I think you guys are mostly concerned with things going back to normal, and normal being pumping gas there. And I think you certainly want to be able to be heard and have a discussion. You know, and again, it could just, I know a lot of people are chiming in that they'd like to just have, you know, a meeting. So I'm fine with that. We could just do that. So I'll just work with our agency partners here. We'll figure out a time. You know, not everybody may have to attend, and we'll try to get Buster or whatever, but we will have a follow-up at some point next week.